When the lights came up on the Got Talent España 2024 stage, the audience was buzzing with the usual excitement. Another night, another dreamer, another act hoping to turn a few minutes of courage into a lifetime of change. The judges settled into their seats, confident but curious. They had already watched singers hit impossible notes, dancers defy gravity, and magicians bend reality. What they didn't expect was that the most unforgettable performance of the season would come from a discipline so unknown that even the host struggled to describe it. The performer stepped forward slowly. No flashy costume, no dramatic entrance, just a focused presence and an intensity that made people lean in without realizing why. He introduced himself calmly, explaining that what he was about to do wasn't a trend, wasn't viral, and wasn't something most people would recognize. It was a discipline that had existed quietly on the edges of sport and art, practiced by very few and mastered by almost none. The crowd murmured. The judges exchanged looks. This was already unusual. He explained that for years, people had told him his passion was too strange, too niche, too risky to ever belong on a mainstream stage. He had been advised to switch to something safer, something easier to explain, something that fit neatly into a category. But this discipline had saved him once, during a period of his life when everything else was falling apart. That was why he was here. Not to be famous, but to be seen. As the music started, it was clear this wasn't going to follow any familiar pattern. His body moved with a combination of control and explosive power that didn't look like dance, gymnastics, or martial arts, yet somehow felt like all of them at once. The first movement drew polite applause. The second caused silence. By the third, people were sitting forward in their seats, eyes wide, unsure how a human body could move that way without breaking. Then came the first twist. Halfway through the routine, the music cut out completely. For a split second, the audience thought something had gone wrong. The performer froze, standing perfectly still, breathing heavy. A judge frowned, ready to speak. And then, in total silence, he continued. Without music, every movement became sharper. You could hear the air shift, the subtle impact of feet on the stage, the rhythm of breath-controlling motion. This discipline, usually hidden behind loud sound and fast visuals, suddenly revealed its true core, absolute mastery of body and mind. The silence made it intimate, vulnerable, real. One of the judges whispered, almost to themselves, that they had never seen anything like this before. Another leaned back, shaking their head in disbelief. As the routine built, it became clear this wasn't just about skill. It was about survival. Each movement told a story of struggle, repetition, injury, and persistence. The performer's face shifted from calm to strain, from strain to fierce determination. The audience could feel it. This wasn't rehearsed perfection. This was lived experience. Then came the second twist. At the peak of the routine, just when it seemed impossible to go further, he deliberately failed a move. He stumbled. He fell to one knee. Gasps rippled through the room. In talent shows, mistakes usually mean disaster. But this one felt intentional. He stayed down for a moment, head bowed, breathing hard. And then he stood up again. What followed was not faster, not bigger, but deeper. The movements became slower, more controlled, almost defiant. It was as if he was saying that this discipline wasn't about never falling, but about what happens after you do. The audience erupted into applause before the routine had even finished. By the final pose, the entire theater was on its feet. The judges didn't clap immediately. They stood there in silence, processing what they had just witnessed. One judge finally spoke, admitting they had come into the audition skeptical, unsure how an unknown discipline could compete on such a big stage. But now, they said, they felt like they had just watched the birth of something new. Another judge asked the question everyone at home was thinking, why had no one heard of this before? The performer smiled, a tired but genuine smile, and explained that disciplines like his often live in shadows. They require years of training with no guarantee of recognition. No shortcuts. No applause. Just obsession and belief. Most people quit before the world ever notices. The third twist came with his backstory. He revealed that only a year earlier, he had almost quit entirely. An injury had threatened to end his ability to train. Doctors advised rest, maybe even retirement. Friends suggested moving on. For months, he couldn't perform at all. Depression followed. Doubt followed. But instead of abandoning the discipline, he rebuilt it. He adapted movements, changed techniques, found a new way forward. What the audience had just seen wasn't his original style. It was a version born from limitation and pain. That revelation changed the atmosphere completely. What had already been impressive now felt monumental. This wasn't just talent. It was resilience made visible. When the judges voted, it was unanimous. Yes, yes, yes. But the moment that sealed the performance didn't come from the judges. It came from the crowd. As the performer bowed, the applause didn't fade. It grew. People chanted his name. Others wiped away tears, surprised at their own reaction to something they couldn't even name properly. Clips of the audition exploded online within hours. Viewers from the United States and around the world commented the same thing again and again. "I've never seen this before, but I can't stop watching." People tried to categorize it, argue about what it should be called, debate whether it was sport or art. But the performer didn't care. In interviews after the show, he said something that resonated deeply with audiences overseas. He said that the world doesn't lack talent. It lacks patience. Too many people give up on what makes them different because it takes too long for others to understand it. His audition didn't just introduce a new discipline to mainstream television. It challenged the idea that only familiar talents deserve space. It proved that sometimes, the most powerful performances come from the edges, from people who refuse to simplify themselves to be accepted. As the season continued, his journey became one of the most talked about arcs of Got Talent España 2024. Each performance pushed boundaries further, not by becoming louder or flashier, but by becoming more honest. Judges began referencing his audition when talking to other contestants about originality and courage. For viewers in the United States, the story hit especially hard. In a culture obsessed with quick success and viral moments, here was proof that slow, invisible dedication could still break through on the biggest stages. That even in a different country, speaking a different language, raw human determination needed no translation. By the time the finale approached, he was no longer just the guy with the unknown discipline. He was a symbol of what happens when someone trusts their passion even when no one else understands it. And it all started with a quiet walk onto a stage, a discipline few had heard of, and the courage to be misunderstood. That is why this performance didn't just make people say wow. It made them rethink what talent really means.